debate. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is to speak in favor of Bill C-6. This bill represents an important step forward toward building a more supportive and inclusive Canada for all, specifically for the LGBTQ2 community. Debate on this legislation has been very respectful and quite different from what we would have heard only a few years ago. I am heartened to hear most MPs stand up and say uncategorically that conversion therapy on minors is abhorrent and must be stopped. We've heard stories about how damaging conversion therapy can be on young people who are struggling with their sexuality. It is important to remember that it is not just the person undergoing conversion therapy that is impacted by this form of torture, and I truly believe it is. Family members and friends are impacted as well. Many truly believe that if this therapy is available, if it is advertised, then it must be acceptable, and it's anything but. I realize this legislation falls short of a total ban on transition therapy, but it's a start. The measures contained in this bill are the most progressive and comprehensive legislation response to conversion therapy in the world. Some members of the official opposition are worried that this bill lacks clarity. They claim that passage of this bill risks criminalizing conversations between young Canadians, discovering who they are, and the individuals they may seek out for advice from, like parents, teachers, faith leaders, or coaches, for example. However, the language is quite clear, Madam Speaker. Nothing in this bill criminalizes these types of conversations. What this criminalizes is exactly what the Leader of the Opposition claims he supports, criminalizing forcing a young person to undergo conversion therapy against their will or removing them from the country to do so. We're criminalizing a discredited and deeply traumatic practice. We are also ensuring individuals profiting off of conversion therapy or the advertisements to provide it can no longer do so. Now, under this legislation, the following definition of conversion therapy is provided. It is a practice, treatment, or service designed to change an individual's sexual orientation to heterosexual or gender identity to cisgender, or to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. For greater certainty, it does not include a practice, treatment, or service that relates to an individual's gender transition or an individual's exploration of their identity or its development. In other words, these amendments will not criminalize those who provide affirming support to persons struggling with their sexual orientation or gender identity, such as friends, family members, teachers, social workers, religious leaders, and so on. Nor would the amendment criminalize private conversations between consenting adults. And I have another definition for my colleagues. Therapy, according to Merriam-Webster, is a medical treatment of impairment, injury, disease, or disorder. It means to fix, to heal something that is impaired, disordered, or broken. Conversion therapy assumes something is wrong with LGBTQ2 Canadians. Take note, the Canadian Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality from its list of disorders in 1982. Telling a young person they're abnormal and need to be fixed, or trying to fix them, is the problem and why this bill is necessary. I encourage all the members of this House in their deliberations on this bill to read firsthand accounts of what the survivors of conversion therapy go through. In Gerard Connolly's memoir, Boy Erased, inspiration for the film of the same name, he writes about his experiences surviving in a conversion therapy camp. This is the sort of counseling they offered, telling him, quote, "Your thoughts are harmful to God. They're disgusting, unnatural, an abomination," end quote. Abomination, Madam Speaker. I will say that word again because abomination is not a descriptor that should be used for anyone. Can you imagine how traumatizing that is for anyone, let alone people in a vulnerable state looking for love and support and being told they're unnatural? That's not therapy, that's torture. Canada is an accepting country, and we've come a long way in the 50 years since homosexuality was decriminalized, in the 38 years since it stopped being seen as a mental disorder, or even in the 15 years since same-sex marriage was legalized. But we still have so much farther to go. I represent the riding of London West, and our city has had its own history of denying the LGBTQ2 community their voice. In 1995, organizers of the Gay Pride March asked the mayor of the day to issue a city proclamation in support of the Pride March. She refused. The decision led to a 3-year legal battle that ended with the Ontario Human Rights Commission fining the mayor and the city $10,000 and ordered the city to make the proclamation. Today, the Gay Pride Parade is one of the best celebrations in London, bringing together people of all ages, ethnic origins, and sexual orientations. It was one of the big disappointments this year due to the pandemic that we couldn't have the usual parade, and we can only hope that next year's Pride Parade will be able to move ahead as usual. Because we need to remind the community how important it is to have a voice and for young people to know they're not alone. We don't have to go too far back in our own history in this chamber to remember how far we've come. As we know, Section 15 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Equality Rights, protects sexuality and sexual orientation from discrimination. However, we must remind ourselves that sexuality was not explicitly stated in the original document. The Joint Committee of Parliament established to review the Charter rejected explicitly including sexuality by a vote of 15-2. The committee heard from organizations representing LGBT Canadians as to why they thought sexuality should be included in the Charter. The meeting was held just down the hall from this chamber, and the questions the honourable members asked at that time makes for discouraging reading. I share them with my colleagues because I want to demonstrate how dated some of the language and arguments around this issue are. One member actually stormed out of the proceedings after denouncing the gay and lesbian witnesses for peddling what he called an unacceptable lifestyle, one that would corrupt children. Another member shared that view and told LGBT Canadians that they really shouldn't complain about the persecution he acknowledged they experienced. To him, they deserved it. Thankfully, these abhorrent comments are a minority, and I know Canadians recognize the need to value and love everyone, even those who are different from us. Thankfully, today, we can see that Canada has openly LGBTQ2 legislators, mayors, actors, musicians, and athletes. Their mere presence shakes the barriers that the community continues to face and slowly and surely helps bring those down. Their voices help us realize how we have failed them in the past and where we must do better. We know that despite the recognition of equality under the law, out and proud role models, and most importantly, the growing support of LGBTQ2 Canadians, fear of being different remains. That fear is not unfounded. Unconscious biases still exist, as do attitudes which are not accepting and supportive. Some avoid coming out because they believe it may negatively affect their careers or how their friends and family might view them. Some who have come out deal with the trauma of being rejected by friends, families, and communities. Far too many LGBTQ youth from Nova Scotia to London to Alberta to British Columbia still don't find the love and support they need. It's heartbreaking to know that there are around 40,000 young Canadians who are homeless right now. Up to 40% of them are homeless because of their LGBTQ2 identity. It's hard to come out, and it can be hard to have someone you love come out to you. Organizations like PFLAG London in my community are there to help individuals who come out and help their families and friends as well. There are countless other organizations, including many religious ones, that help persons who struggle with issues of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. These real supports will not be negatively impacted by this law. Supports that treat people with respect, love, and dignity. Those are very small asks, Madam Speaker. That is how all human beings should be treated. That is how you can have those difficult conversations with the ones you love. Conversion therapy assumes something is broken and needs to be fixed, but it hasn't fit the definition of therapy in Canada for almost 40 years. This bill is long overdue, and I am proud to support it because it is another step in the right direction. We cannot continue to pretend that the abusive, sickening practice of conversion therapy is okay in any way, shape, or form for our communities. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires?